We are in a series that we just kicked off last week called The Way Out. We are walking through the Old Testament book of Exodus, and we're going to be breaking it down into three parts, this grand narrative of the Israelites' history. We're going to be talking about the way out, the way through, and the way in. And we're right here at the start, taking our time in this section that we're calling the way out. Last week we were talking about Egypt, and now today, on the second week, I want to talk with you about a name. A name. When I was in college, I was given the nickname in my very first week of school. I cringe even telling you this because some of you are going to probably have fun with it and call me this. Don't do it, all right? Don't do it. My last name is Chipkowski. So I was bestowed upon me the nickname Chubbs. Yeah, let that one sink in for a second. I don't like that. And for 4 years, what do you think I was known as all over campus? Chubbs. I was a lot skinnier back then, too. It stuck. Thank God I'm not called that anymore, and I do not want to hear that out of any of your blessed mouths. You can call me Justin, you can call me Pastor, you can call me PJ. I don't care, just don't call me that. You can call me Chipkowski. Don't call me Chubbs. Names and nicknames, they're powerful. They can stick, and they hold a certain kind of weight in us every time we hear them. Here's a name, Adolf Hitler. That carries something. Goliath. Martin Luther King Jr. Judas Iscariot. Mother Teresa. Abraham Lincoln. Jesus. Some names carry darkness. Some carry hope. Some carry betrayal. Some carry courage. Names carry weight. In Exodus, we are going to encounter a name that changes everything. The weightiest name. Last week, as we discussed Egypt, we looked at what it represented and Pharaoh, the king, and what both of those meant to the people of God. When Scripture speaks about Egypt, it's more than a location on a map. It's something like a symbol. It represents seasons where God's people felt stuck, where life narrowed and became very tight, where hope felt distant. Egypt is the place where survival replaced promise for a time, where identity slowly got shaped by pressure, and where people began to believe that they were only what they produced. And Pharaoh is more than just a historical ruler. Pharaoh represents the voice of control, the voice that constantly says, do more, give more, be more, because you belong to this system. It's the voice that hardens your soul over time. It's the voice that resists the purposes of God. Egypt is the place of bondage, and Pharaoh is the embodiment driving it. Now, if Egypt represents bondage and Pharaoh represents control, then the question that's left for us is, who stands over them? Is there a power greater? Who stands over Pharaoh? Who can help the Israelites when at the time the most powerful man in this powerful nation is against them? Who can stand up to this power? And we resume in Exodus chapter 2, starting in verse 23, and it says this: Years passed, and the king of Egypt died, the Pharaoh of that time. But the Israelites continued to groan under their burden of slavery. They cried out for help, and their cry rose up to God. God, hearing their groaning and he remembered his covenant promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he looked down on the people of Israel and knew that it was time to act. The title used for God here is a title, like Pharaoh is a title, and it's a common one that we see in the Old Testament. It's the word Elohim. Elohim is one of the primary titles, and it's actually, in its form, it looks plural in the Hebrew, referring to more than one. But when it talks about the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, even if it has a form that's plural, it acts singular. So in other words, all you need to know is this. This is the Bible's way of saying that this is the fullness of God in His greatness and His power. And it seems like there's a lot, but it's one great God. It's who we see in Genesis chapter 1. The God who speaks and creation happens. The God who's bigger than everything, outside of it, in control of it all. He is the Elohim. But what's His name? My name isn't pastor. That's just a title. What's God's name? At this point in history, these Israelites hadn't entered into a covenant with God. That was yet to come. They had heard stories about how He made a covenant with their forefather Abraham and how He continues to honor that covenant through Abraham's son Isaac and through Isaac's son Jacob. But now, generations later, like Jacob did at Bethel in erecting a monument in honor to God, here today in Israel, at this time in their history, there are no monuments erected for generations to remember who God is and what He had done. That was outside of Egypt. They're in Egypt. The land that they're in represents enslavement, darkness, and the presence of many other gods worshipped by the Egyptians, and temples to them, and texts to them, and sacrificial systems to them. But the unnamed Elohim of their Hebrew ancestors, you're not going to find a temple. You're not going to find one text dedicated to Him at this point in their lives. Generations of God, where are you? Who are you? Is there even a God who cares, who sees? They're living in a land that doesn't see them as equal citizens, but as overpopulated foreigners, unworthy of equal human rights, and expendable within their economy. And even though they're growing, they're hurting deeply. Things get so bad that Pharaoh, as we saw last week, of the time, passes a law that orders all Hebrew baby boys be thrown into the Nile River and drowned. And the Israelites can't take it anymore. Their oppression in life becomes too great. But what they're not trying to do, and I need you to hear me, their response that we just read, it's not trying to make a political statement. They weren't moved by some religious principle that was guiding and governing them. They were just people, ordinary people who had been pushed so far beyond the limit of human capacity, so they begin to do the one thing that they can do as slaves. They cry out. They prayed. And when you read Exodus verse 23, it reads that they sent up what seems to be this unaddressed prayer, hoping that someone would hear. It doesn't say that they're crying out to the God of their answers. It says that they cried out and they offered up a prayer. And then it says, God heard it. So if there's a God, and if you hear, then help us, whoever you are. When trying to address a letter today, you need a name. And they didn't have a name, but they still cried out. And someone hears. Folks, I want to say this to you today. God is a magnet for the cries of the abused. Hundreds of years after the events of the Exodus from Egypt, when this same ethnic group, the Israelites, are living under a new oppressive empire that imposes massive taxes, occupies their ancestral land, kicks them out of their homes, has a history of defiling their temples of worship, whose soldiers will come in and turn their lives upside down, drag them to prison, and even do things like force them to carry their equipment on their days of rest, a system that doesn't see them as people, but as dogs and expendable ones. In this time, a young rabbi, a poor man, the son of a carpenter, starts a ministry, and in his ministry, he decides to go back to his hometown, a rural, no-name place called Nazareth, filled with a ton of these very oppressed people. And on the day that you go to synagogue, he goes to synagogue with the whole town for their weekly gathering, and he, a young rabbi, is given the chance to teach, and he chooses to read from the scroll of the prophet Isaiah, which promises a day when God will deliver his people from this very oppression. Just as he once did, he will do again. He unrolls the scroll and he begins to read in chapter 4 of the Gospel of Luke in verse 18. It says this: "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim that captives will be released, that the blind will see, and that the oppressed will be set free, and that the time of the Lord's favor has come." And he rolls up the scroll, and he looks at the people in the synagogue, and he says, "Today, this has been fulfilled in your midst." And there's a gasp. Because everybody knew, but they were in disbelief that did he really just say that? This rabbi, Jesus, did he really just say that he is the fulfillment? This is Jesus, God in the flesh, declaring to the hearers, "I have heard your cries of oppression, and I've come to set you free." When the cries of the oppressed rise up, God does not stay silent. It's in this place of tension that God acts. The place of oppression becomes ground zero for deliverance. And in the story of the Exodus, when oppression is greatest, that God acts. When a baby is born and meant to be killed, but it's rescued instead. And that baby's name is Moses. Another name. So Moses is born, and there's that law that went out that Pharaoh had given, and his mom, wanting to save his life, puts together this basket. It's literally the same word for ark that's used going all the way back to the time of the ark in the book of Genesis when the great flood came. And she makes a little ark and puts him in the basket and puts some tar over it to keep him safe and locked in. And then the basket floats down the river. All the while, his older sister, who's a young girl likely, is keeping watch and protecting him as he's floating through the Nile. And then he makes his way to none other than the palace of the Egyptian Pharaoh. And when you think that this would have been the worst possible outcome for this baby, right into the lion's den, the very household of the oppressor, taken captive by his daughter, instead of oppression, we see compassion. Pharaoh's daughter sees him and knows that he's one of the Hebrew babies who's meant for death, but decides to raise him herself in the palace. And in Exodus chapter 2, verse 10, we see the name that she gave. It was the name of Moses. And she said, I've called him Moses because I drew him out of the water. Literally. In Hebrew, the name is Moshe, and it sounds like the Hebrew word for mashah, which means to mash a lot of potatoes. No, it doesn't. No, serious. It means to draw out. So Moses means one who has been drawn out in Hebrew. He's a baby pulled from the Nile, saved from death, rescued from chaos, but before he ever speaks, before he ever leads, before he ever parts a Red Sea, he's a child in need of rescue. And don't miss this. In Scripture, water for the ancient Jew represents danger and judgment. The flood, the Red Sea, the waters covering the deep before God brought about creation. It's chaos. It's dangerous. Moses' life begins in the waters of chaotic death until he is drawn out. But here's what makes this even more interesting. Many scholars believe that Moses' name is actually Egyptian in origin. Simply, Jewish people trying to draw out a meaning that's relevant for them, which is, of course, yes, but they believe he wasn't named by the daughter of Pharaoh with the idea of her trying to be culturally sensitive. She's giving him a common name that would have been very well associated with an Egyptian language. In ancient Egypt, the word Moshe meant something like born of or son of. It was a part of royal names like Tut Moshe or Ramses. So while the Hebrew tradition ascribes meaning to this name, this Jewish boy is raised in an Egyptian household with likely an Egyptian name. So you can imagine in this moment, if you put yourselves in Moses' shoes as he grows up, he's in quite the predicament. He's in quite the identity uncertainty. Am I Hebrew or am I Egyptian? He grows up in the household of an Egyptian palace. But his name certainly has Hebrew significance. He belongs to two worlds, and this tension is going to continue to shape his life. And now there's something else, still with the name, Moshe. And the Hebrew form of this name doesn't just sound like drawn out. It can also carry an active sense, almost like the one who draws out. So the one who is drawn out and the one who does the drawing out. So think about this. He's drawn out of the water as a baby, and later he will draw Israel out of Egypt. He is rescued from death, and later he will lead a nation through the Red Sea. His name holds both his salvation and his calling. First, he is the one drawn out. Then he becomes the one who draws others out. And here's the principle, folks. Before God uses you to deliver others, he delivers you. Before freedom becomes your ministry, it becomes your testimony. Moses couldn't lead a people out of bondage if he had never experienced rescue for himself. And maybe that's a word for some of us today. You're frustrated because you're not leading yet. You're wondering why God hasn't put you in a position that you've been longing for yet. And you're anxious about your future. But maybe God is still drawing you out. Because the people who are used by God to bring freedom are people who have tasted it first. You know what grace is. So then you can lead it. So Moses grows up in this tension. Am I Moses, the one who was drawn out, or am I Moses, the son of an Egyptian? Let's have some fun. Finish these phrases with me. You ready? Here we go. I'm going to give you some phrases. You finish them with me. Pain in the... Oh, neck, I was going to say, but there you go. Pain in the butt. Like it. Drama. You're such a know-it. You big cry. Son of a gun. Gun. You're in church. Come on. We have names in our culture that shrink people down to their worst qualities. We have hurtful names that make a person question their identity. Scrooge. Karen. Right? Yeah, you know that one? All right. Benedict Arnold. And a horrible one in the black community is an Uncle Tom. Horrible names. And these names become symbols that deeply affect us as we carry them within us. Who is Moses? Who am I? One day, Moses, he's grown up and he goes out for a walk. And as he's out for a walk, he sees an Israelite getting mercilessly beaten by an Egyptian slave driver. And he looks to the left and he looks to the right. And he decides to go and he attacks the slave driver. He kills him and he hides the body. The next day, he goes out for another walk and he sees two Israelites fighting. And then he tries to be the peacekeeper. I mean, after all, now he's qualified, right? Didn't he prove himself? He stood up for them. He put the oppressor in their place. Moses, the rescuer, is now ready to draw his people out of the chaos of slavery and lead them into freedom. But he's rejected. They don't see him as Moses the deliverer, not as Moses the rescuer, but as Moses the murderer. What, if we don't stop, are you going to murder me like you murdered that Egyptian yesterday? So now he's rejected by his own people, the Israelites. And he realizes that once Pharaoh finds out what he did, he's going to be rejected by the palace. And he's going to be killed. So he runs. Not Moses, the deliverer of Israel. Not Moses, the Egyptian priest. But Moses, the fugitive, on the run. In chapter 2, verse 15, we pick up and it says this. And sure enough, Pharaoh heard what had happened and he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian. When Moses arrived in Midian, he sat down beside a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters who came as usual to draw water and fill the water troughs for their father's flocks. But some of the shepherds came and chased them away. So Moses jumped up and rescued the girls from the shepherds. And then he drew water for their flocks. So in the deserts of the southern lands of Midian, Moses finds himself at an ancient Near Eastern hookup spot. A place to go and date. A well. You don't believe me? You think I'm kidding with you? Isaac's wife Rebekah, guess where she was found? A well. Jacob and his wife Rachel, where do you think they hooked up? A well. So boys, find yourself a well. Now, it's at the well. It's at this well that Moses finds himself, a foreigner in a distant land, and he sits down and he looks and he sees these 7 nice-looking gals, and all of a sudden he sees they're being harassed. And so what does Moses do? He intervenes. He rescues the oppressed. Seems a little bit familiar. He sees somebody being harassed, oppressed, and he steps in. And look at the intentional irony of the part of this story. It says that after he drove off the shepherds that were harassing these girls, he goes to the well and he drew water out of the well and gave them water. He drew it out. Moses, whose name means one who has been drawn out or one who does the drawing out. Well, it worked because he ended up marrying one of those girls. And one of those girls that he rescued, that he married, they had a son, and they named their son Gershom. And the name Gershom means, I have been a foreigner in a foreign land. So now he names his son his own identity. His son represents his life. And what is my life now? Is it Moses the Israelite? Mm-mm. Moses the Egyptian? Mm-mm. Now it's Moses the foreigner. And he's going to be a foreigner in hiding for 40 years. He's going to carry that identity. I wonder how long it's been for some of us. How long have you been wandering? How long have you been on the run? Should I still be in this line of work? I thought my marriage was supposed to get better with time. I keep reading my Bible, but I don't feel closer to God. Nobody ever gives me a chance. This parenting thing, it's so much harder than I imagined. The wilderness has a way of stripping us down. It takes away your titles, it takes away your platforms, and it leaves you alone with one question. Who am I? One day Moses, he's out tending his father-in-law's sheep, and he sees an anomaly. He sees something that you just don't ever see. It's a burning bush, and it won't go out, and the bush won't be consumed. It's intact, it's fine, but it's on fire. And it just keeps burning and burning and burning. And then in chapter 3, verse 4, it says this. As Moses is approaching, it says, when the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God, Elohim, called to him from the middle of the bush, and he says, Moses, Moses, here I am, Moses replied. In the middle of nowhere, as a foreigner in a land where he thought he would have been long forgotten, a voice from a burning bush calls out and says what? His name. Moses. So Moses interacts with this voice, and this voice tells him that he is the Elohim of his ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he has a mission for Moses, and that mission is to go and be God's messenger to the Pharaoh of Egypt with the message that's simple: let my people go. And look at Moses' response. But Moses protested to God. Protested. Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? Who am I? This tells you all that you need to know about Moses' current self-assurance. It was non-existent. So Moses and God start having a back and forth, and Moses says, okay, say I listen to you and I go. The Israelites, they don't respect me at all. Been there, done that. My name means nothing, and I'm a fugitive in the land. So who should I say sent me? Because my name doesn't mean anything there. Whose name? What's your name? Which God? What kind of God are you? What's your superpower? Do they know you? How can we trust you? What's your name? And in verse 14 it says this: God replied to Moses, I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel: I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel: Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my eternal name, my name to remember for all generations. So the first reference point that Moses and all the Israelites are going to be given that will carry them from slavery through the wilderness and into the promised land, it's not even the sacrificial system. It's the name of God. I am. YHWH. And the best that we can try to guess what it sounded like was Yahweh. We don't know. It could be like something like that. We really don't know, but we say Yahweh today. It's the self-existent, always present, never changing name of God. This is the name to the Elohim above all Elohims. What's his name? Yahweh. I am who I am. What we are reading here is an enormous revelation of power, of authority, and a capacity to govern, but it's also the self-disclosed revelation, not of another title, a name. This is the mighty creator of the universe becoming intimate with his creation. And the name of this God means something for Israel's future. There's a building, a crescendo with the giving of his name. He says, tell them that I, Yahweh, I'm this God. He said, I'm the God of Abraham. I am the God of Isaac. I am the God of Jacob. And this is my name forever. The one you heard the stories about. The one who led your ancestors again and again and again. It's me. And here's my name. And the name Yahweh, it will outlast Pharaoh. Yahweh will be there long after Pharaoh is out of the picture. It is this God who dominates the story and will dominate both Pharaoh and Egypt. We are about to witness this God of the ancestors breaking into human history and break apart the plans of evil men. And in chapter 4, verse 1, it says this, but Moses protested again. What if they won't believe me or listen to me? What if they say, the Lord never appeared to you, you're out of your mind? What if the name of God isn't enough, is really what he's saying. Get this. The God of the universe just shook hands with Moses and said, hi, my name is, to Moses. And Moses is still concerned with his lack of self-assurance. What if they don't believe me? That doesn't have anything to do with God. He will go on to continue to protest and say things like, I don't speak well. And in fact, you know what, God, I just rather, I'm old, or I'm good shepherding, or I've gotten used to the land of Midian, whatever it might have been. Find somebody else. I'm good. Moses has spent his life asking, who am I? Am I Egyptian? Am I Hebrew? Am I a murderer? Am I just a foreigner? Am I a shepherd? I don't know about you, but I've been there. I've been so messed up and mangled and confused about my life that even if God showed up in a burning bush encounter and personally introduced himself to me, I've been in times where I've been so confused and insecure that I'd still be stuck looking at myself and my problems and my own insecurities rather than see that the God of the universe just introduced himself and is looking at me, seeing me, knowing me, calling me. At the bush, God fixes Moses' identity when he reveals his own. Before Moses can know who he is, he must know who God is. Moses was so concerned with his insecurities, what people would think, what would they do if they didn't like him, and would they even listen to him? And if we fast forward to Moses standing later, eventually before the Israelites, listening to God, and he reveals who God is to them, and that God has heard their groanings, and he's here to rescue you. It says this in Exodus 4:31. Despite all of Moses' insecurities about whether or not they would listen, here's what it says they do in response to receiving the word of God for them and hearing the name of God. Then the people of Israel were convinced that the Lord had sent Moses and Aaron. And look at what they did. When they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshiped. They worshiped. The work of God didn't lead to a self-assurance of this people or of Moses. That's not what we're reading here. It wasn't this idea of, oh, I do got this. The work of God led to worship. Utter and awe-filled response to the presence of a God who heard me when I called. Last week we talked about the Hebrew word abad. It can mean, depending on the context, to work or to worship. In Exodus 1, the people are slaves working, abad, for Pharaoh. And now, in this moment, they are seen by Yahweh and they abad him instead of Pharaoh. They go from working for Pharaoh to worshiping Yahweh. God's personal self-disclosure, His very name, brings about a new creation of the Israelites from slaves to citizens. This new citizenship demands a trust that is ready to depart the unsettled, busy, demanding, oppressive world of Egypt. When the people ask, "Who are you? What's your purpose? Why should we listen to you?" Look, God, He expects Moses to trust in His name. God doesn't build up Moses' ego. He doesn't give him a self-talk exercise. He doesn't say to remember the time when you killed the Egyptian or the time when you stood up for the ladies at the well. Yeah, you saw where that got you, right? Now you got a great wife and a kid and all that. Like, trust yourself. You can do it. He doesn't do any of that. To all of Moses' insecurities, God told him to respond to any questions about identity in chapter 3, verse 14 by saying this: I am has sent me. Well, who are you? I am has sent me. What's your qualifications? I am has sent me. Don't you have a record here? I am has sent me. You don't seem to talk very well. I am has sent me. Folks, if God has gotten a hold of your life, who are you now? We live in a culture obsessed with identity. I used to be addicted to personality assessments in college. It was so fun. It was just like, ooh, what's it going to tell me next? What am I? And like the Myers-Briggs and the DISC assessment, and then years later, the Enneagram came out. And then I stopped taking them because I kind of got tired of it. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a 1, I'm a 7, I'm a 9, I'm a DS, I'm an IC, I'm an INTJ. I'm like, who cares anymore? Stop. But recently I retook one for fun. And what they say about personality assessments is it doesn't matter much of how your life changes. You're usually consistently who you are. Like if you take a personality assessment 10 years ago and you take one today, it should be fairly consistent. Mine was totally different. I was like, I've been living a lie this whole time. Who am I? Who am I? Where do I belong? What defines me? What's my label? Questions that culture wants us to be concerned with. And this part of the Exodus story teaches us that we don't discover who we are by looking inwardly first. Looking inward isn't a bad thing, but when we're looking at it first, that's not what the story teaches us to do. We discover who we are by encountering the name of God, the great I am. So when you feel trapped inside of yourself, when you so desperately want to have an identity, when you feel like who you are now isn't who you should be or want to be or are told you need to be, the answer, listen to me, is not found within yourself. It's found outside of yourself in someone who is so much greater and loving and kind than you or anybody on this earth could be to you. Exodus is first the story of God leading His people on the road out of slavery. Moses' story was never about his cultural heritage. It was never about his accomplishments. It was always about the sovereign hand of God drawing him out of the chaos, the mess of Egypt, And now God is going to use him to draw out the rest of his people and rescue them. The name that changes everything in the story of the Israelites, listen to me carefully, was not Moses. Wasn't. It was Yahweh. What my name means can change depending on what I do or don't do, how people see me, where I'm born, my accomplishments, my failures. My name doesn't change anything, but itself is subject to constant change. But God's name, it's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And his name has the power to change every circumstances that my name might face. In the New Testament, Jesus meets a Samaritan woman at a well. Another outsider. Another person living in tension. Another person carrying labels. She's been married 5 times, and now she's living with a man who isn't even her husband. And drawing water alone at noon is where Jesus finds this woman, and she's alone at noontime in the heat of the day, which was uncommon. That's not when you went to the well, which means that this was likely a sign that she was ostracized by her own people. I wonder what names have been whispered about her, what labels she's been given, and I wonder how she saw herself. In this moment, Jesus, he sees her for who she is, and he doesn't call her a name, but he shows her that he knows her. Just as God called out to the stranger, Moses, Moses, and Moses was known, he shows this woman he knows her. In fact, he knows everything about her. Like all the stuff that you don't want people to know. Like, I had 5 guys, and the guy I'm with, I ain't even kind of married with, and I'm trying to keep it under wraps, and we haven't told my parents about it yet, and all of that. It's like, she's like, oh, but I know you. He's turning her world upside down. In this short interaction in the Gospel of John, he's stripping her identity down to its core and showing her that he knows everything about her story. The good, the bad, and the in-between. And she gets uncomfortable. And she starts scrambling to find a way to kind of stop being seen by Jesus, and all the while growing more and more insecure. And you can imagine this anxiety. This well-kept secret is so plainly known by this random stranger. And so she starts arguing with him. And she throws a bunch of religious things into the mix, and they're having this back and forth. And finally, she can't seem to stop the bleeding and to stop being seen and known by this random man. She throws a proverbial Hail Mary, and she says this, when the Messiah comes, he'll explain everything. So why don't we just call it quits right here? I heard your side of the story. I gave you my side of the story. But really the answer is the Messiah, who we're all waiting for. And he has the answers. We're waiting for him to straighten these things out. And then in John chapter 4, verse 26, Jesus looks her straight in the eye. And he told her, I am the Messiah. In the Greek, I am is ego eimi. And there are significant times in the New Testament where Jesus reveals himself as ego eimi, the, all capital, great I am. The I am Yahweh that met Moses at the burning bush is now in the flesh, showing up in people's lives when they're at their worst, showing them that he sees them and says, I am. At the bush, Moses asks, what's your name? At the well, the woman asks, who are you? At the bush, God revealed his name in fire. And at the well, God revealed his name, Jesus. The woman lives in her own Egypt, 5 husbands, living with the man who isn't her husband, rejected by her people. And to this situation, Jesus responds and says, I am. Not who are you, I am. The same voice from the bush, now standing beside a well. Moses was drawn out of water. Israel was drawn out of Egypt. And now this woman is being drawn out. She's drawn out of her shame. Exodus is a story of the way out of slavery, out of false identity, out of the name spoken over you, out of Egypt. But the way out isn't a strategy, it's a name. I want to invite the worship team to come forward at this time. The name that changed everything in the story wasn't Moses. It's Yahweh. And when Jesus stands at a well and says, I am, he is declaring that the way out of sin, out of shame, out of insecurity, out of brokenness, out of hatred, out of confusion, out of bondage, it's in him. He provides the way out. Folks, you and I, we don't find the way out by figuring ourselves out. We find the way out by encountering Jesus. So I just want to give some moments here as we close our time just to respond and allow space for us to have an encounter with God. We're just going to sing a little bit of a song, and right where you're at, I want to encourage you, seek the Lord. If you do want to come to the altar and pray, you are more than welcome to do that. If you want to sit in quiet, we're just going to take a moment and sing this song and talk with Jesus, and then we'll dismiss you.
Shout Jesus from the mountains, Jesus in the streets, Jesus in the darkness over every enemy. Jesus for my family, I speak the holy name, Jesus. Shout Jesus from the mountains, Jesus in the streets, Jesus in the darkness over every enemy. Jesus for my family, I speak the holy name, Jesus. Shout Jesus from the mountains, Jesus in the streets, Jesus in the darkness over every enemy. Jesus for my family, I speak the holy name, Jesus. Holy name, Jesus, your name is power, your name is healing, your name is life. Break every stronghold, shine through the shadows, burn light. Jesus from the mountains, and Jesus in the streets, Jesus in the darkness over every enemy, Jesus for my family, I speak the holy name, Jesus, your name is power, your name is power, your name is healing, your name is life, there is no other name. Break every stronghold, shine through the shadows, burn like a fire.
Jesus, we believe that your name has the power to free us, to free our loved ones. We believe that we live in freedom even now. Those who know you, who know what it is that you have done for them, we are blessed to live in the freedom that you have given us. God, grant that same freedom to others. Let others know what it is to live unshackled, to live free, to live only as slaves of you, you who are a gentle and good master. May we rejoice in the freedom we have today under your name. May your blessing be upon us as we leave here today. May we carry your name with us everywhere we go. Thank you, Jesus, for all you've done, for everything ahead of us, for walking ahead of us as a light. Thank you, God. Amen. Thank you, everyone. See you next week. Go and be with God.